I've always been someone who minded my own business. I never got involved in neighborhood drama, never pried into anyone's personal affairs. But sometimes, even when you keep to yourself, the nightmare finds its way to your doorstep. Moved into my apartment complex about 6 months ago. It wasn't anything fancy, just a small one-bedroom unit in an older building. The kind of place where you recognize faces but don't really know anyone. It was quiet, which was exactly what I wanted. At first, my neighbors seemed normal. An older couple across the hall, a young woman a few doors down, and directly next to me, an unassuming man in his late 40s. I didn't know much about him. I'd see him coming and going, usually wearing a long black coat, always carrying a briefcase. He never spoke, never made eye contact, but I didn't think much of it. Some people just liked their privacy. Then the noises started. It began with soft knocking sounds at odd hours of the night. At first, I thought it was someone at my door, but when I checked the peephole, there was no one there. The next night, it happened again. A series of faint taps, rhythmic, deliberate. I assumed it was coming from the unit next door, but it didn't make sense. The knocking wasn't coming from the hallway. It was coming from the shared wall between our apartments. One night, as I was about to drift off to sleep, I heard something that made my skin crawl. A whisper, low, drawn out right against the wall. "I see you." I shot up in bed, my heart hammering in my chest. I grabbed my phone, staring at the time, 3:13 a.m. I didn't know what to do. Maybe I had imagined it. Maybe I was just paranoid. I put in my earbuds and tried to ignore it. But the next morning, something strange happened. As I was leaving for work, I noticed my neighbor standing in his doorway, staring at me. He had never acknowledged me before, but this time he just stood there, eyes fixed on me, his expression completely blank. "Did you sleep well?" he asked. His voice was flat, devoid of any real curiosity. I forced a polite nod and walked past him, doing my best to ignore the sinking feeling in my stomach. Over the next few nights, the knocking intensified. It wasn't just light taps anymore. It was heavier, more forceful, like someone was deliberately trying to get my attention. Then, one night, it escalated. At around 2 a.m., I was woken by a loud bang. It sounded like it came from inside my apartment. My heart raced as I sat up, scanning the dark room. I turned on my bedside lamp and listened. Silence. And then, just outside my bedroom door, I heard my front door knob rattle. I froze. Someone was inside my apartment. I reached for my phone, ready to dial 911, but before I could, the rattling stopped. I sat there, holding my breath, waiting, listening. Then, from the other side of my bedroom door, I heard a soft whisper. "I see you." I jumped out of bed, grabbed the heaviest object I could find, an old lamp, and backed toward the window, ready to throw myself out if I had to. My mind was racing. How did they get in? Had I forgotten to lock the door? I stood there, gripping the lamp, my entire body shaking. Minutes passed. Then, slowly, the doorknob began to turn. I braced myself, and then nothing. No one entered, no footsteps, just silence. I stood frozen for what felt like hours before finally finding the courage to open the door. The apartment was empty. The front door was still locked. The chain still latched. I barely slept that night. The next morning, I went straight to my building's management office and demanded to know if they had given anyone access to my apartment. They assured me that no one had been inside. There were no signs of forced entry. That night, I didn't want to be alone. I called a friend, explained what had been happening, and asked if they could come over. I didn't tell them everything. I didn't want them to think I was losing my mind. But I told them enough to make them uneasy. Around midnight, we were sitting in the living room when it happened again. The knocking. My friend looked at me, eyes wide. "You weren't joking." We both stared at the wall, waiting, listening. Then something new happened. A scratching sound. Long, slow, deliberate. My friend grabbed their coat. "Nope, I'm not staying here." I didn't blame them. I wanted to leave too, but something inside me needed to know. So I knocked back. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then 3 soft knocks replied. My blood ran cold. I had had enough. I grabbed my keys and ran to my neighbor's door. I pounded on it, not caring if I woke the entire building. I needed answers. The door creaked open, but the man wasn't there. The apartment was empty. No furniture, no personal belongings, nothing but a bare mattress on the floor. It looked abandoned. I stumbled back, my mind reeling. How was that possible? I had just seen him that morning. I reported everything to the landlord, but all they could tell me was that the unit had been vacant for over a year. No one had rented it since the last tenant, a man who had gone missing under mysterious circumstances. I moved out the next day. To this day, I don't know who or what was behind that wall. And sometimes when I'm alone at night, I still hear the knocking,